same live on Facebook. Shalom Israel. Shalom. We are the I.S.U.P.K out of 1 West, 125th Street, Hall, New York, under commanding Gen.YAHANNA. I'm Priest and Officer Yakad. This is Priest and Officer.
Yeah, so happy Allah.
We are from the I.S.U.P.K Trinidad Tobago camp. Alright, and tonight is the continuation of the Feast of Purim. Alright, this is where we give the story of out of the book of Esther, and understanding why we celebrate this day called Purim. It's a 2-day celebration. We had the first day, that was yesterday, first day of the feast, and today is the second day or second night of the feast. This is where we celebrate the destruction of our enemies. Very similar to how the our oppressors, our enemies were destroyed coming out of the land of Egypt. In this instance, we were also under captivity. But there were those who wanted to plot against the destroy the nation of Israel, who were living among the heathen at that time. And this sister called Esther and her cousin Mordecai, did something wonderful so that the nation of Israel was saved, out of the hands of the heathens, and they who wanted to destroy us. Right. So this sister called Esther, did something remarkable, in as much that she was given or honored with having a book, one of the few sisters to have a book, dedicated to her in the scriptures as a great example, of being a sister, of sharing brotherhood, towards her people.
Right.
Are you feel anything, sir?
Again, as the officer bringing out this, this is why it is important to really pay attention again to the view these classes, and then look at the history behind, of people or children of Israel who are us, Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians, is very important. And this is why, on these feast days, it is very important, because why? What the Black, Hispanic, and Native Indian man, woman, and children supposed to be celebrated.
That's right.
The Lord's high holy days. So again, as Christian officer, you can't continue to host these feast days here in Trinidad and the Trinidad and Tobago camp. We invite all brothers and sisters to tune into the classes. Again, you can contact Officer Galawan, who is the head of the camp here at 290-5173, and get in class. So
Muslim Christ. And of yesterday, when we did the story, we basically reached the point where Esther, in the book of Esther chapter 5, was walking into the scenario where Esther went before the king to give petition unto the king to find out what could be done to save the nation of Israel. She fasted for 3 days, she and her maidens, as well as the rest of the nation of Israel at that time, along with her cousin Mordecai. And with that, she girded up her loins, as we had put it, and went to go before the king, knowing fully well that this could be her last time, because anybody who went before the king unannounced at that time, it was punishable by death. All right, so I'm going to continue the reading. All right, so we read from both as well, from the Apocrypha and also the Bible. The Apocrypha is also part of the scriptures. All right, there are 14 books that is not so-called included in the current version of the King James Version, right? But it was part of the original first book of the KJV, 1611, right? So the continuation of Esther from verse chapter 10 continues in the additions of Esther in the Apocrypha. Right, so I'll continue. I'll just start over from top of verse 5, So we just get back at the context from where we left off. The book of Esther, chapter 5 and verse 1. And it came to pass on the third day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house, over against the king's house. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over against the gate. And it was so, when the king saw Esther, the queen, standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter.
And this point, you know, that's why you see it's very important as well that you really read out at the Apocrypha, just as they make mention last night. So you'll get the whole context. We'll really go down there. So really, and let me go to and really read that part because I watch that. And verse chapter 15 in the Apocrypha.
So reading out of the Apocrypha. This is one of the books. Son. The book, the editions of Esther, chapter 15 in the Apocrypha.
And you know, last night when you was reading out of the Apocrypha, you was reading 14 and it was coming down to, as you say, at the end that she prayed. And which was something and all very important and all, you know, seeing that as being a woman in any nation.
That's right.
And you know, giving that full honor to your head, because again, she considered Mordecai as a father, you know, in growing up and taking care of her. And this is why when he made mention to her concerning, you know, hey, don't make mention concerning who he is.
That's right.
And you know, as we see, just a little backdrop on history. With this king, he could have choose any woman out of any one of the provinces, but at this time, you know, he was choosing one out of the province of Shushan. And at this time, as Mordecai make mention to, you know, to the sister, hey, this probably the time with the most time you are saving your folk.
That's
to
right.
Save the nation. So we're going to read, as we say, in the Apocrypha, the continuation of the book of Esther, chapter 15 and verse 1.
The book of Esther, chapter 15 and verse 1 in the Apocrypha. And upon the third day, when she had ended her prayer, she laid away her mourning garments and put on her glorious apparel.
And this is what we was at just now in verse 5. We're talking about, you know, the same thing that what she was doing, right? Go ahead. You can chime in for more.
Yeah. And being gloriously adorned, after she had called upon God, who is the beholder and savior of all things, she took 2 maidens with her, and upon the one she leaned and carried herself daintily, and the other followed, bearing up her train. Yes, Salakia. You know, that is also where even today, you know, when they have these wedding ceremonies and they have the dress, they will have the what we call the train or the trail, you know, hanging in the back. So this was a custom that that the nation of Israel and the women had, and these things were adopted by the nations, right? So this was always something that, you know, all women, because all women dress was on a different level. You understand? Because why? We had laws, we had commandments set up so that we will be able to live and show ourselves righteously before the Most High. So I don't think so.
Continue.
Verse 5. And she was ruddy through the perfection of her beauty, and her countenance was cheerful and very amiable, but her heart was in anguish for fear.
And again, you know, just as she make mention in she prayer, as we was reading before.
Okay.
This was a prayer, you know, to strengthen her go before the king, because again, knowing again, this king was no ordinary king. So when we reading in verse 5, you know, in the Bible, at chapter verse 5 in the Bible, concerning, you know, who it was, it skipped past all of this.
Okay.
But in here, it will make mention how this king was.
That's right.
Go ahead.
Okay. Verse 6. Then having passed through all the doors, she stood before the king, who sat upon his royal throne, and was clothed with all his robes of majesty, all glittering with gold and precious stones, and he was very dreadful.
Read that part again.
And he was very dreadful.
So you see why why, because remember this man, he's a ruler over 27 provinces. I remember now, as you see, if you go back to history concerning all, you know, the major captivities. At this time, this was in the time of the Persia and Media. And you know, that was just after, I believe, the Babylonian captivity. So it was always war concerning who would run or dominate the earth. So this time was this king, because remember now in verse 1 at the in Esther, it was talking concerning about the same king. This was a celebration concerning the victory. That's right. Over that other kingdom. That was ruling at that time. So this was a celebration about a victory. Right? Go ahead.
Okay. Verse 7. Then lifting up his countenance that shone with majesty, he looked very fiercely upon her. And the queen fell down and pale and fainted, and bowed herself upon the head of the maid that went before her. Verse 8. Then God changed the spirit of the king into mildness.
And this is something that is very important as well, because again, it always make mention that the Most High God is the one in control of everything. So he could change that spirit, just like what he's doing right now. He could pour that spirit and give instructions to them angels and them to change the mind of this person, to do either good or evil. Okay. Right? I know you can, if you want to compute anything.
Yeah, come on. Also, just, you know, just looking back at, you know, right back up at verse 5, you know, it says she was ruddy through the perfection of her beauty. You know, a lot of people like to use the ruddy, you know, to say, well, you know, that is what light or red. But ruddy was really showing that, you know, it shows a beautiful countenance. You understand? That was a description. So she wasn't that she was red or fair, if you had to put it like that. And even using the word fair, or, you know, she was fair to look upon. It's describing the beauty or the image of the person.
And the breakdown, right?
The
show what already is.
The show exactly what already is. So, you know, right, that would be, you know, a big cut for anybody who's trying to use this to say, well, you know, with the example of David, you understand? Say he was ruddy. This was just showing that he was a good-looking guy. You understand? And it's shown here also in the scriptures in the book of Esther. And, you know, really showing, you know, that this sister, you know, girded up herself. And this is what she did here is a perfect example that, you know, the women of Israel should take today. Because even though she was in total fear, you understand, at that time, going before the king, knowing that she could die, there was not any trace of it on her face. You understand? Because if we read it back, you see, it here, her countenance was cheerful and very amiable, but her heart was in anguish for fear. You know, seeing, you know, she had that ability to what? Hide that away. And this is something even our women had to be able to had to learn to do. Because any little thing happening in your mind, everybody had to know. You understand? Everybody know when you're vexed. Everybody know when you have something behind you. You understand? And these are things that, you know, we had to be able to have control over, understand that there's a time and a place to be able to what? Express certain type of emotions. Because why? Some people would use that to their advantage. You understand? Use it to abuse you if they really get to understand and know certain things about you and your emotions at that time. Right?
Yeah, no sir, no sir.
And we continue on verse 8. Then God changed the spirit of the king into mildness, who in a fear leaped from his throne and took her in his arms till she came to herself again and comforted her. So like he comforted her with loving words and said unto her, Esther, what is the matter? I am thy brother. Be of good cheer. So like, you know, she really had this king who is in control of 127 provinces. She had this man in the bag. You understand? Understanding in her femininity. You understand? She was able to what? Break down this king to smithereens. You know, breaking down to the point where all his fierceness and his, you know, all the dread that he had, all that went from 100 to minus. Because what? She was able to what? Use her feminine charm to be able to what? To break the spirit of this king. So that what? He will be in her favor, which would also put the nation of Israel in favor. And that's what the Most High wanted. Because the Most High used the opportunity and through Esther to what? To break down this king. Is that if I think so? Okay. Verse 9. Esther, what is the matter? I am thy brother. Be of good cheer. Thou shalt not die. Though our commandment be general, come near.
Right, and as you make mention of that, as we see when we read in verse 5, chapter 5, in the Bible. So I'll just read this part now, and you'll get to understand now this whole thing, how it goes, right?
So read it?
You now read it. The book of Esther, chapter 5 and verse 1. Now it came to pass on the third day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house over against the king's house. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house over against the gate of the house. And as it was so, when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter. So, as we will read, we read on down in the Apocrypha now, we will see all what happened. That took place when she fall down the whole ship. He jump off the throne. He jump off the throne. Now he making mention here now, as he say, thou shalt not die. Though our commandment, you can remember now, you could not come before the king.
That's right.
Unless he say, well,
come out.
So that's why all of that now, you can remember now, if they read Constitution, she make mention of that. When Mordecai, you know, came, send the message unto her. And then he reminds she that, hey, don't feel you'll get saved. Don't feel the sin in this sin, you'll get saved. Right?
So I'll continue. The book of Esther, chapter 15 and verse 12. Salakia, verse 11. And so he held up his golden scepter and laid it upon her neck.
So one time, remember now, all of that was supposed to, you know, you're supposed to get a command, but when you see all of that, now one time, because now remember now, as the scripture say, that they know that then God changed the spirit of the king. So one time, all that, as we say, roughness, one time, you get break one time because why? He changed your whole spirit.
Go
ahead.
Verse 12. And embraced her and said, Speak unto me. Then she said unto him, I saw thee, my Lord, as an angel of God, and my heart was troubled for fear of thy majesty. For wonderful art thou, Lord, and thy countenance is full of grace. And as she was speaking, she fell down for faintness. She had it clean. She had it really clean here. Because that was that's what she prayed for. You know, that the Most High would give her that ability to speak. You know, with that kind of grace. I know, and this kind of grace in speaking to this heathen king, she was able to now what? Break him down. Right. You understand? And you know, really bring him to the point where she was able to get what she needed, or for him to be able to hear what she said. Right. You understand? At that point. Verse 15, and as she was speaking, she fell down for faintness. Then the king was troubled, and all his servants comforted her.
In 16, you go find out everything.
So you're going back to the Bible, in the book of Esther, chapter 5, and continuing from verse 4. And Esther answered, If it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him. Then the king said, Cause Haman to make haste, that he may do as Esther had said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. Verse 6. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of the wine, What is thy petition? And it shall be granted. And what is thy request? Even to half the kingdom be performed. Then answered Esther and said, My petition and my request, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king had said. It's a lot here, because at this part here, this is, you know, immediately after she spoke with the king, as we read in 16 and 15, and you know, he asked her, what you want? He said, no, what you want? And even at that time, you know, Haman was also at the castle at the time. So when he was asking her that, what you want? She said, hey, what, I want to organize a banquet for you. You and Haman come to tomorrow. And all that was what? In preparation for her to be able to go and face the king, as well as face Haman, who wanted to destroy the nation of Israel. Not just Mordecai, but the entire nation of Israel that was in captivity among these heathen nations at that time. And with the help of what? These other nations, these other heathens, who was there? Because he could not do that alone. Because we had what? Other enemies besides the so-called Amalekites. Right. You understand? Yes, they were our enemies, but all these other nations were our enemies as well. The Elamites who were there, they hated us. The Moabites who was there, they hated us. The Ethiopians who was there, they hated us. Other Africans who was there, they hated us. So at that time, everything was being what? Laid in the perfection, so that when that time comes, everything that Esther prayed for to the Most High would be accomplished. Right.
before you continue to go to 60. So you get a better understanding concerning this.
So switching over now to the book of Esther in the Apocrypha, chapter 16. The great king Xerxes unto the provinces and governors and 107 and 20 provinces from India unto Ethiopia and unto all our faithful subjects greetings. Many the more often they are honored with great bounty of their gracious princes, the more proud they are waxen, and endeavor to hurt not our subjects only, but not being able to bear abundance, do take in hand to practice also against those that do them good. Verse 4, and take not only thankfulness away from among men, but also lift it up with the glorious words of lewd persons that were never good. They think to escape the justice of God, that seek all things and hated evil. Verse 5, oftentimes also fair speech of those that are put in trust to manage their friends' affairs had caused many that are in the authority to be partakers of innocent blood, and had unwrapped them in remedialess calamities.
So you see what's going on there? So she now speaking now. All that, was taking place now. Because remember now he make that now and she grants it. So this is she now speaking to the king now concerning, because remember now, just as he make mention, he tell me I'll grant you 50-50 anything, and with that conversation now that she and the king having now, she's speaking to the king, hey, remember now I's part of your kingdom.
That's right.
I's part of you. So your people and this is my people. So this is how she breaking it down now. Because remember now when we go to read back now, that when she go declare she pedigree before the king. Concerning, well, this is my people. So now I'm talking, hey, you use my husband. So you taking care of me. Then you have to take care of my people too.
That's right.
Because I looking out for your people. So you have to look for my people.
Verse 6, beguiling with the falsehood and deceit of their lewd disposition the innocency and the goodness of princes. Now ye may see this, as we have declared, not so much by ancient histories, as ye may, if ye search what had been wickedly done of late through the pestilence behavior of them that are unworthily placed in authority. Salakia, she really breaking it down smooth. So in essence, these men we are put in position, these men are wicked bastards. You understand? And she really, laying it out smooth, in eloquent speech. Being a sister, the most I give her that ability, speaking to the king to be able to say the right thing.
And before we go on, we just read and she prayed what she was praying about.
Verse 14?
Yeah, I will read it. Yeah, that's what. Book of Esther in the Apocrypha, chapter 14 and verse 12. Remember, O Lord, make thyself known in the time of our affliction, and give me boldness, O King of the nations, and Lord of all power. Verse 13, give me eloquent speech in my mouth before the lion.
That's right.
So again, she already know that it is a great distinction between she and him. Right? Turn his heart to hate him that fighteth against us. Is she praying for?
The nation of Israel.
Right? That there may be an end of him and of all that are like mind to him.
Mhm.
But deliver us with thine hand, and help me, that I am desolate, which have no other help but thee. So you could see again the spirit, right? No, that's real, right? So, because she makes some yeah and all mention in she prayer now, verse 15,
Mhm.
that thou knowest all things, O Lord, thou knowest that I hate the glory of the unrighteous, and abhor the bed of the uncircumcised, and of all the heathen. So even though she in that place,
Okay.
she just as last night concerning we was bringing out concerning with the same sister, hey,
Mhm.
you give up your nation, your white nation,
That's
to
right.
love this black brother. So she was doing the same thing. She would not give up her nation.
That's right. That's what it's supposed to be.
Even though she was this heathen, the most I had a day for a purpose. And this is what Mordecai was breaking down to her at that time.
Mhm.
Probably was there for this purpose at this time to help the nation. And this was again, this is why again we had the book of Esther.
Okay.
So
Continuing in verse 8, chapter 16 and verse 8. And we must take care for the time to come, that our kingdom may be quiet and peaceably for all men, both by changing our purposes and always judging things that are evident more equal proceeding. For a man, a Macedonian, the son of Adatha, being indeed a stranger from of Persian blood, and far distant from our goodness, and as a stranger received of us, had so far forth obtained the favor that we shew towards every nation, as that he was called our father, and was continually honored of all men, as the next person unto the king. Okay.
So as she make mention and she talking about about us, talking about both of us, concerning this man who close there, who saying on next year. Go ahead.
Okay. But he, not bearing his great dignity, went about to deprive us of our kingdom and life.
So you see what's going on there?
Setting up the plea. Okay. Yeah. Continuing, verse 13. Having by manifold and cunning deceits sought of us the destruction, as well of Mordecai, who saved our life, and continually proceeded, so like he procured our good, as also of blameless Esther, partaker of our kingdom with their whole nation. For by these he thought, finding us destitute of friends, to have translated the kingdom of the Persians to the Macedonians. But we find that the Jews, whom this wicked wretch had delivered to utter destruction, are no evildoers, but live by most just laws. Okay. Yes. So you see here, even now, I say she laying down the cards. She's setting up the table so that, she didn't just come and say, well, look, this man here, look what he do. She was very eloquently, because the king, despite he was a heathen, he understood a lot. You understand? Remember, he running 127 provinces. So that wasn't just a normal thing. You had to have some level of understanding to be able to put those things in place.
This was a celebration
Okay.
concerning overtaking the Babylonian Empire. So based on what she bringing out now is like she talking directly to him.
Okay.
Letting him know, hey, if you only make and slip up here, you next to fall. Which we know, as we say, through history, it did happen. It did happen.
Continuing. We finish verse 16. Yeah. And the jump back.
Yeah.
And that they be children of the Most High and most mighty living God, who hath ordered the kingdom both unto us and to our progenitors in the most excellent manner. Wherefore ye shall do well not to put in execution the letters sent unto you by Aman, the son of Amadatha. So you come back in the book of Esther, chapter where we stopped? We stopped at the book of Esther, chapter 5 and verse 9. We start back at verse 8. Yeah, start from verse 8. So like here. So my God, we go to take 5 and 8. Sure.
Yeah, count. The book of Esther, chapter 5 and verse 8. And if I have found favor in thy sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king hath said.
Continue, Bishop.
Verse 9. Then went Haman forth that day joyful and glad in heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up nor moved for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. Verse 10. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself, and when he came home, he sent and called for his friends and Zeresh his wife. Verse 11. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches and the multitude of his children and all the things wherein the king had promoted him, and how he advanced him above the princes and servants of the king.
So we see here now in the book of Esther here, again, where this Haman, this Amalekite, this from Amalek, him being proud as he is, you understand, thinking that, when Esther say, well, let me keep our banquet, you and the king alone, he thought, well, I'll get you. You understand? He reaching that big boy position, second to the king, he thought, well, all right, I want to get some big honor, some big glory. And again, you're seeing again the hate and the indignation against the nation of Israel. When he come out and he see Mordecai, and he can't stomach that, Mordecai didn't pay no reverence to him. But I say he hold back a little bit because he didn't want to, jump out too fast. Because he's studying well, I might get a big promotion tomorrow, but he still holding back until he probably get a chance to say, oh, I got swing back for Mordecai. You understand? So all that, playing with his mind. So when he go home now, he realize, boy, I'm not going to let them know. I feel I'll get you that big promotion tomorrow. That's right. So I don't know if you want to add anything with that. And we're seeing, where these heathens, you understand, they glorify in the destruction of the nation of Israel. You understand? Because why? We are God's chosen people. And they know that. Right? So continue, Babu Kisha.
Verse 12. Haman said, moreover, yea, Esther the queen did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared, but myself, and tomorrow am I invited unto her also with the king. Verse 13. Yet all this availeth me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. Verse 14. Then said Zeresh his wife and all his friends unto him, let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and tomorrow speak thou unto the king, that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. Then go thou in merrily with the king unto the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made.
So you see here now, where this man, in celebration of what he think is a promotion, his wife, you understand, say what, build a gallows, and then go in and celebrate. You understand? So that is it's showing you, you know, the kind of people that you're dealing with. You understand? And a perfect scripture for that, I think we could get Ecclesiasticus chapter 26 and verse 23. For sure, this I could pull up that myself. You know, in that it would really sum up, you know, that type of person.
26 and 23.
Can.
The book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 26 and verse 23. A wicked woman is given as a portion to a wicked man.
Lucky, I read that one more time, Babu Shah.
Ecclesiasticus, chapter 26 and verse 23. A wicked woman is given as a portion to a wicked man, but a godly woman is given to him that feareth the Lord.
So you see, a wicked woman is given to what? A wicked man. So a man's wife is exactly what he is, a wicked bastard. You understand? Yeah. So much so that, you know, look at the advice she was given with her husband. You understand? To further what? Destroy the nation of Israel. I don't hear that anything say. Okay. So you're looking at, you know, how these nations operate. But we cannot forget that the nation of Israel is what? God's chosen people. You understand? And in Psalm 37 and 25, you know, you're really seeing, you know, the epitome of what that is. And it says, Psalm 37 and 25 says, I have been young, and now I'm old. This is David talking. Yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. You understand? So even then, David understood, you understand, that the nation of Israel, you understand, is near to the Most High, and he will not forsake the nation of Israel. You understand? Once we keep his laws, his commandments, he is very merciful, as we know, to the nation of Israel. Right? So Salakia, we can continue back on. I think you were in 5 still?
That's it, good 6, chapter 6.
All right, can go ahead.
The book of Esther, chapter 6 and verse 1. On that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of the chronicles, and they were read before the king.
Salakia. So even now you're seeing where the power of the Most High, you know, is starting to work. He send them angels down, you understand, to put things in place. So this king couldn't sleep for some reason, but we know what is the reason. That is the Most High at work, and it's angels. So he couldn't sleep, so he say, here what? Why bring 2 of them books, they must see what my forefathers, see what's happening in the kingdom, and they must have to read. Continue, Babu Kisha.
Khan, verse 2. And it was found written that Mordecai had told Bigthana and Teresh, 2 of the king's chamberlains, the king's keepers of the door, who sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. Verse 3. And the king said, what honor and dignity have been done to Mordecai for this? Then said that ministered unto him, there is nothing done for him. Verse 4, and the king said, who is in the court? Now Haman was come into the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. Verse 5.
So you're seeing in that moment, understand, where the Most High is really setting up, putting the nails in the coffin for Haman, setting him up for that great fall. You understand? And at this point, he coming in to make a request to get rid of Mordecai. And at that same moment, that same king is reading about the deeds, the righteous deed that Mordecai did. I don't know if you had anything to say.
Again, just as we was reading in the Apocrypha concerning with the Most High, moving the spirit of the king towards now, you see where he moved his spirit again, because remember now, as you also make mention, he could not rest. He could not have a proper night rest. So now what he doing now, his spirit stirring now. Hey, just bring them records and them. Let me look back in the records and see, because something here, ain't adding up.
That's right.
Ain't adding up. Right? So, correct.
That's okay. Continue.
And the king's servant said unto him, behold, Haman standeth in the court. And the king said, let him come in. Verse 6. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighted to honor? Now Haman thought in his heart, to whom would the king delight to do honor more than myself? Verse 7. And Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delighted to honor. Verse 8. Let royal apparel be brought, which the king useth to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. Verse 9. And let his apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes.
Salakia. Babu Kasha, 1 second. So you're seeing, in so much pride that this heathen have. You understand? You say, yo, who else you're coming on,
Yeah.
Who else deserve this? I tell you the kind of pride, the kind of audacity Haman had at that point in time. Because what? He believed he was in that high seat. You understand? And the nation of Israel, is under captivity. So we're seeing here now where, when they're supposed to be under our feet, he believe he update. You understand? Just as now, when you look at where we are, blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians, all these other nations think what? They're better than us. They update. You understand? When you look at how these Chinese operate here in Trinidad, how the East Indians operate here in Trinidad, you understand? When you look at how the so-called 1% and all these other nation of people, when all these so-called Africans come across here, they look down on us. When we supposed to be the one above every other nation. So we see here with this heathen thinking that this honor what the king go and give, they for me. So he's trying to put everything in place to what? To put himself on that pedestal. You understand? Continue, Babkusha.
The book of Esther, chapter 6 and verse 9. And let his apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man with all whom the king delighted to honor, and bring him on horseback through the streets of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighted to honor. Verse 10. Then the king said to Haman, make haste, and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew, that sitteth at the king's gate.
Okay, so you see here, this is it past irony. You understand? The man who are coming to talk to the king to put to death, that is the man that what the other one honor not. That the man who going to bring the report to kill him, that is the man who had got what? Give him all that reverence. So the same thing that Mordecai didn't want to do to him, he had to do that now to Mordecai. You understand? I gotta say Barakatah how shy way. You know how the Most High is really take things that seem update for the hidden and bring it to what? To naught. So I don't know if you had anything to say.
Yeah, and as they make mention of that concerning what was taking place there, all that the king looked at him because remember now he is the man right under the king.
That's right.
And all the way laying out now is for the next person under he to do.
That's right.
But all what was taking place now, he didn't again unknowing to him, he will be the one who had to again walk through the streets with this man on this horse with his royal apparel.
So that is the man who, who really, have to do the job that he thought. You understand what have been done for him, and even that, bringing a remembrance of the scripture as well. That is Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse 7. So I need somebody to pull up Babu Kusha.
Ecclesiastes.
Yeah, 10 and 7. Yes, and this is a good example, of what is happening now and what's happening back then, even then when the nation of Israel was under captivity, when we should be on top. You understand? We see now these other nations, coming to what a higher state. So go ahead, Babu Kusha, if somebody have it.
The book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 10 and verse 7. I have seen servants upon horses.
You have seen what?
Servants upon horses. And princes walking as servants upon the earth.
So Lakia. You have seen servants upon horses. That horse showing that level, that height of authority or power. You understand? That dominance. The man on the horse, he's the man in authority. You understand? And you say what? You've seen servants on horses. It's supposed to be what? The other way around. Which means these heathens have gotten up high. And the nation of Israel, the princes, you understand? Prince of the power, you understand? We have what? Come down low. So these heathens are going on top, and we have what? Come down to what? Be what? Servants. And it's supposed to be the other way around. When you look at society now, when you look at blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians, what position we in? We supposed to be on top of these heathens. It shouldn't have no Chinese cotton style.
Right.
No East Indian cotton style on me.
Right.
What they call what? Pests and cockroach and everything else under the sun. When we are the ones who the most are ordained to be all nations on the face of the earth. So like yes, and if you add anything, Babu Kusha.
Yeah, on point there again, this is why it is very important, again to read out about our records, because as it make mention concerning all these plots that these heathens and them, continue to plot against us, and as the Holy Ecclesiastes 10, right underneath in verse 8, you can just read the full part of the Ecclesiastes.
Can. The book of Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse 8. He that diggeth a pit shall fall into it.
So you see exactly what take place there. He set up your own self. Because of pride.
Right.
And we know how prideful these nations and them are. And again, the Most High God is the one who does stir up the spirit. And build up the pride, because again, for he to demonstrate the power throughout the earth. And to show that, the glory and, the honor of the children of Israel. right? The nation of Israel.
So, like that particular precept?
Last.
Oh, so like, no, that the Ecclesiastes.
Yeah, that's Salakia.
Yeah,
Right, on verse 8. All right, so the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 10 and verse 8. He that diggeth a pit shall fall into it, and whosoever breaketh an hedge, a serpent shall bite him.
A what?
A serpent shall bite him.
So you understand? So now we are turned. You understand? And we see here the destruction of these heathens. And as Officer Sawa brought out, you know, that pride is something that is really, you know, it's in the blood of these so-called Amalekites. You understand? And you're seeing, you know, where this destruction, you know, coming up, and it will destroy these people. Because why? Because of that pride. And we can find us even in Jeremiah chapter 49. So like here, Bible question, if somebody guys pull out before we get back to the story. Jeremiah chapter 49 and verse 15.
The book of Jeremiah, chapter 49 and verse 15. For lo, I will make thee small among the heathen, and despised among men.
And this is really talking about I.S.U.K. You understand? Talking about the heathen, the so-called white man. You know, showing how the Most High bring down their nation what to nothing. Continue.
Thy terribleness hath deceived thee, and the pride of thine heart, O thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, that holdest the height of the hill. Though thou shouldest make thy nest as high, I will bring thee down from thence, saith the Most High Power.
So we see here where the Most High, you know, really through Jeremiah was prophesying what? The destruction of Edom. You understand? And even now, how America is built, you know, this is that prophecy that what bring down, you understand, all these strongholds in the minds of the people. Continue, Baba Kusha. Verse 17.
Verse 17. And Edom shall be a desolation. Everyone that goeth by it shall be astonished, and shall hiss at the plagues thereof.
And that is what's going on with America now.
Right.
And all these nations that join up with them. You're seeing what the destruction. Day by day, you're seeing what America and all those that are around this Babylon, you understand, this home being destroyed. Right. So that was just a little snippet, you know, to show the pride of these heathens and how they operate. So if you could go back to the story about Bishop.
The book of Esther, chapter 6 and verse 10. Then the king said to Haman, make haste and take the apparel and the horse as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. Verse 11. Then Haman, Salakia, then took Haman the apparel and the horse, and arrayed Mordecai, and brought him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaimed before him, thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighted to honor. And Mordecai came again to the king's gate, but Haman hasted to his house, mourning, and having his head covered.
Salakia. Yeah, go ahead. So you see here where Mordecai again, you know, through the grace of the Most High, you understand, through what? Not trimming his ways to seek love. You understand, was able to what? Have victory. You understand, even over Haman. When Haman thought, well, he would have come and destroy Mordecai, that very same person he wanted to destroy, he had to what? Walk before and reverence. And even the point where he say, and having his head covered, that was talking about the embarrassment and the shame he had to feel. Because why? The other heathens who are around him was plotting with him to get rid of Mordecai. And guess what? He himself had to what? Walk and shout and give honor unto the same man who he wanted to kill. And we see it here where the Most High bring that to naught. I don't know if you add anything to.
Yeah.
Continue, Babu Kusha.
Khan, verse 13, and Haman told Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends, everything that had befallen him. Then said wise men and Zeresh his wife unto him, if Mordecai be the seed of the Jews.
If he what?
If Mordecai be the seed of the Jews, before whom thou hast to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him.
And that is, Salakia, that is extremely, extremely important to understand it. Because even those heathens understood, because they know what? Mordecai was a Jew. And they know the history of the children of Israel, who are the Jews. And they knew, as I said, the wise men and his wife said, if you begun to fall, you understand, against what? This Jew, it didn't make sense. Because they know the Most High is against him. Continue, Baba Kusha.
Khan, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shall sorely fall before him.
Because what? They know and understand the power of the Most High. Continue.
Verse 14, and while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains, and hasted to bring Haman unto the banquet that Esther had prepared. The book of Esther, chapter 7 and verse 1. So the king and Haman came to the banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, what is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted to thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed, even to half of the kingdom. Verse 3, then Esther the queen answered and said, if I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. Verse 4, for we are sold, and my people to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage.
Salakia. And we see here, this is, coming into, the real essence of what she wanted to keep the banquet for. And when you go into the Apocrypha in chapter 16, this is what she was really, this was the additional stuff that she was, laying out to the king, about the plot of this wicked Haman that, wanted to destroy the nation of Israel. So here now, she given that description, in the Bible here, in chapter 7, and in the Apocrypha, giving you a little more detail of all what she said. Because everything could not be captured, in this right here. But in verse 16, you really get that whole backdrop. What is it?
Same thing concerning with Mordecai when I make mention, why trimmest your wheels?
Okay.
And you can see this concerning the letter, the same thing that in the Apocrypha, chapter 13 and verse 12.
Ecclesiasticus?
No, the Apocrypha.
Oh, the Apocrypha.
Same.
Right, 13. Okay. Right, so in the Apocrypha, In the Apocrypha, in the edition of Esther 13 and verse 12, thou knowest all things, that thou knowest, Lord, that it was neither in the contempt nor pride, nor for any desire of glory, that I did not bow down to proud a man. Understand? So, showing, the condition of Mordecai. Verse 13 says, for I could have been content with goodwill for the salvation of Israel to kiss the sole of his feet. And that, Salakia, is that aspect of brother. God said.
So again, just as you was making mention concerning your trimming your ways, you could have trimming ways.
Right.
But because now we're understanding who this man is, and again understanding whole history and the backdrop concerning with based on where King Saul, because that's what I was reading all the time. So they remember it's two rivalry, just as the general of them continue to be recorded. This war, Esau and Jacob.
Right.
As you say, two nations in the womb, always a rivalry.
Right.
Always a rivalry. So the always in that. So this one remember me. I remember Saul get order, but Saul tried to save, but go on. Samuel come and he slew. Cut off this Amalekite head, because why he get instruction to destroy them.
Right.
So he now being second under this Xerxes or wherever his name is, this Persian.
Right.
As we know, 30 years more than the Iran. Seeing the opportunity to do what? To destroy the Jews. So that's why you could again make mention, hey, with silver, just as the officers bringing out yesterday in the class, this silver and this gold. Anybody side with me? That we wipe them out. Wherever province is, they eat. Because remember now the Jews scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. So he making mention wherever it is, destroy them. Destroy them.
Right.
Yeah. So as you know, by the Roman Catholic trying to remove these records, again, we must say again, Barakatai, how I shy for the I.S.U.P.K. since 1969, holding down this truth. Where brothers and sisters could really come back to the spirit, to the spiritual aspect, understanding who it is, because as a nation lost and not desired by any other is a sad thing. But the rebuilding of the nation is always something that the Most High always had in place, where we as a nation could really come back through our records and by righteous black men, teaching these records to move men's spirit, because a man seeking that understanding to really know the identity.
Right.
So,
okay, Musa and Christ. We continue, Baba Kusha.
The book of Esther, chapter 7 and verse 5. Then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, who is he, and where is he that does presume in his heart to do so? Verse 6. And Esther said, the adversary and the enemy is this wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. Verse 7. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther, the queen, for he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king.
So, Salakia, so you see here now, you realize, boy, that is it. You don't seem to Chico circling over here right now. Because you realize when that mark boss, it's a real problem. So when she boss that mark and say, that is the man, you You understand? Who doing all this plotting and planning. And the king watch him. I hit him that eye, as you would say. He just get up and walk outside because like he could not stomach it. Damn man, that is the man who doing this.
That's right.
The man's second in command. He's the man plotting this. You understand? When that happened, he get up and nah, I can't believe this. Let me walk outside. And when the man realized that, well, boy, I know he had 2, 3, 4 numbers in the pants. If you understand, because that is a dreadful place to be.
Right.
And that same man that was proud and pompous had to what? Start a big free life towards the queen. You understand? And that, you know, his pride went to 0. His pride went minus because what? He now had to what? Beg the queen to save his own soul. But everything was done set. And the angels was done waiting to receive him in glory. You understand? Because why? He had to what? Die in shame. So like I said, I don't think he wanted to add anything.
And we're saying on point,
Right.
Because remember, as I say, getting this news, because remember now, just as he make mention, he now talking to this man second in command. Hey, what do you think we should do for the person who, you know, remind the king concerning women was plotting against him? And because now seeing that, hey, when you plot against me too, it's like nah, he already know that it didn't have no spare for you there. Because remember now, the celebration from the beginning of Esther was the celebration of this king, you know, retaining, as we say, taking over from our next king.
Right.
Because remember, it's war against kingdoms. This Persian Empire is the one who ruling now. So he already know his war. So anybody plotting against him, he already know, hey, you can't survive.
Right.
You would never survive.
Right.
Because what's going on now, you looking to take down my kingdom. That's why again, all this taking place. And again, it's a reminder that as we see, as the Spirit of the Most High continue to move through this society, it's stirring up kings to go against kings.
Right.
Because now everybody now looking for that seat of power. Because again, true, as we say, we listen on the radio in Australia, something going with Facebook.
Yeah.
This one going against him. He say, well, I go unfriend you. They want to unfriend the whole news feed from Australia. That I.S.U.K against, as the scripture say, Egypt against Egypt. So I want to show you how we're going. I go unfriend you. You know my friend again. And then now, as you say, that I come back now, and as you say, you remember now, we can't fight in the open. Because remember that custom. And this was a reminder, as we say, growing up. And we understand, we like to fight in the open, now them fighting in the open.
Right.
And everything being revealed. They're going to see, they are the ones who was always running this.
Right.
No, it didn't have no black, Hispanic, or Native Indian running this. So they're getting exposed, as we say, as the Most High stir up the spirit and stir up their spirit to show who he is,
right,
to show his power. Right.
Okay. I continue, Babkusha.
Come. Verse 8. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. And he said, the king, will he force the queen also before me in the house?
When you're really reading through your records, I just say you can make a movie.
That's right.
Yeah.
You can make a movie out of this. You know, like, wait, boy, this man, die the man, my second, die what you doing? And you walk out on him now. And now, as you say, you're walking back, you know, and seeing what you're trying to do. As you say, my queen, nah, that is true. Yeah.
So that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, almost have a plot to destroy me. And I walk outside and you want to take my wife? Yeah, I mean, and in his desperation, a man's desperation, you know, falling upon the queen because he begging, because he realized It's zero.
Yeah, you don't know.
You don't realize how she going.
Because again,
Mhm.
the Most High God is a God of war.
That's right.
And he already know what war is. Because in his mind, he was already plotting war. And that war is as the scripture said, to kill, steal, and destroy.
Right.
So he already know that was falling on him.
Mhm.
So by he trying, or he already know what's coming. So he playing is like, hey, spare me, but he already know I'm not going to get spared. Yeah.
Okay. So like you continue, Baba Kusha.
Karawakan, as the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face.
So like here. That's a gangster movie right now.
No.
Where by the time he probably didn't finish the way he's saying, because them men they don't know what's going on. Yeah?
Very fast.
You understand? I mean, again, as the officer just later day, you can write that movie. Let's picture this in your mind. You understand that? From the businessman say, what? You want to kill me and you go me and my woman now? And some strong ones come champ you in a bag, brisk. And as we just say, get your trunk right. You understand? Not to be heard or seen again. Continue, Baba Kusha.
Karawakan, the book of Esther, chapter 7 and verse 9. And Abana, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, behold, the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good of the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him thereon.
And you see this part here? This part is something where when I hear them realize what's going on go on and what's going on go down, now they started to because now they know if a squeal take place. Because remember now the conspiring just as in Psalm 83.
Yep.
Everybody come together with one mind, and their mind was always to destroy the nation of Israel. So when that leak now, he now started to squeal and say, that man prepare gallows. That man prepare gallows.
That's right.
And he want to make sure that he fall on the gallows. So to cut it short one time, let me get rid of this, as you say, this bad seed quick before this germ spread, because all our we could end up on the gallows.
That's right.
All our we could end up on the gallows. So he take front one time. Yeah.
And Salakia, and he was very precise. He said this man make a gallows for Mordecai 50 cubits. So he know everything was going on already. So all he had to do, just play on the king's rat day one time, and what he say, yo, don't stick, hang him on it one time, brisk. And those days, especially when something like that happened, it's not just one man going, it's he and the whole family. But they want to know what it's about. Come back and take no revenge on anybody. You understand? So that was the kind of pace that was happening at that time. Continue, Babu Kusha.
Karawankan, the book of Esther, chapter 7 and verse 10. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified.
You understand? So after that, the king said, yo, I satisfied so far. You understand? And as we continue, we'll be able to see and understand, what took place after this, because after this plot was figured out, you understand? And the Most High bring what? The salvation of the nation of Israel. Once again, we will see now how the nation of Israel, or what the nation of Israel did to what? Their enemies. Continue, Babu Kusha.
Karawankan, the book of Esther, chapter 8 and verse 8. On that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman, the Jews' enemy,
The who?
the Jews' enemy, unto Esther the queen.
So it was clear that this wasn't we friend. And this is, as we read in scripture, this was our old rivalry. This set in centuries old our fighting and war and hatred. They hated us, and trust me, we hated them. Because we understood the destruction that they did to us as a people. You understand? And we had to what? Be very vigilant of these heathens that was living among us whilst we were in captivity. Continue.
And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was unto her.
Right, so this is the point where Esther now started to reveal her pedigree. Reveal that, here what? See this man who already saved you, who saved the king life already? This is the man. He's my cousin. He's the man who raised me up. He's the one who teach me you know, how to be how she is. And this also what certified Mordecai now to be what? That righteous man, that's how he is. And bring him before the favor of the king. So she was in a position now to help the nation. And she didn't what? Usurp the authority of a man.
Right.
On top of all that. Because she listened to every single thing that Mordecai told her. Who brought her up as his own daughter. So despite she was in this high position of power, she understood her place. And she knew that here what? She had to what? Honor the men of the Most High. Continue, Baba Kesha.
Khan, verse 2. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from him, and gave it unto Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. Verse 3. And Esther spake yet again before the king, and fell down at his feet, and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite, and his device that he had devised against the Jews. Verse 4. Then the king held out the golden scepter toward Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king. Verse 5. And said, if it please the king, and if I found favor in his sight, and the thing seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews which are in the province, in the king's provinces. Verse 6. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come to my people? Or how can I endure to see destruction of my kindred? Verse 7. And the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen, and to Mordecai the Jew, behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him, Salakia, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Jews. Verse 8. Write ye also for the Jews, as it liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name, and seal with the king's ring, may no man reverse.
That's it.
Yeah, so you know, as you know, the officer bringing out there, and it's very important, and that's why you know we in and out from you know the Apocrypha and the Bible, because again is one book,
Right.
but because again the war against the Roman Catholic Church, because are they you know trying to separate the records and them. This is why our people mind are so destroyed, because now when we go, let me go to same in the Apocrypha editions as the continuation in chapter 13, and you will see from verse 1, we will read from verse 1 to verse 4.
still have young 10.
Yeah, 13.
Chapter 13.
Chapter 13.
Oh, flat.
Yeah, chapter 13 verse 1. Because as you know, make mention then concerning, well, giving charge to Mordecai. Because remember now, as I said, the king now give Esther charge over the house. And now, Mordecai now being in charge now. This is where he writing, because remember now from verse 10 coming to 13 now, he explained himself what took place. And now is verse 13 now. This is what was, as I say, you can read on from verse 13.
The book of Esther, chapter 13 and verse 1. The copy of the letters was this: the great king Xerxes write these things to the prince and governors that are under him from India to Ethiopia in 127 provinces.
So now he re-establishing that letter that was sent out, pull it back. Now Mordecai now, bringing he concern and statement concerning, the Jews or plot against them. Right? Right.
Verse 2. After that I became Lord over many nations and had dominion over the whole world, not lifted up with presumption of my authority, but carrying myself always with equity and mildness, I purpose to settle my subjects continually in a quiet life.
And this was always, again, the king's purpose to as we say, as we always say, that one melting pot. But again, with the wisdom and the understanding, and as Esther, we see, in her prayer, prayed unto the Most High, could have turned, the king's mind to really, look out as she see fit that, hey, I serving in your kingdom, but here we separate now. You are your people and I am a people. So my plea is always towards my people, and seeing that Mordecai, is like a father unto me, and as you say, as he looked out, this was again was in the letter that was written concerning the Jews. Right? Go ahead.
And making my kingdom peaceable and open for passage to the uttermost coast, to renew peace, which is desired of all men. Verse 3. Now when I asked my counselors how this might be brought to pass, a man that excelled in wisdom among us and was approved of his constant goodwill and steadfast fidelity, and had the honor of the second place in the kingdom. Verse 4, declared unto us that in all nations throughout the world there was scattered a certain malicious people.
Who was this malicious people? Who was this malicious people? Because remember now, the letter that Haman sent out.
That's right.
That these people, them unruly, they had no conduct. The background, as they say, it disgusts. As we always say, them is the pest in this society.
That's right.
So if them pests and them get loose, they could plague the society, or they could destroy everybody. We don't want them in control, right? Go ahead.
That had laws contrary to all nations.
So what?
That had laws contrary to all nations.
Because remember now, this was always the fight. Because remember now, the Jews don't bow.
That's right.
To the laws of the other nations, and as you say, knowing the history, and as Mordecai bringing out here now, this all was written in the letter that Haman sent out, that these people had no order. What taking place today? They always like to make mention that blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians don't have no order.
That's right.
And the example again, look at what take place. You know, a plane come to come to repatriate about over 100 and something are we Asherite brothers.
That's right.
The call sanction, them looking to America to see if this plane sanction. You know what America come and say? America come and say, okay, they can go ahead and let them go ahead. The brothers, the Asherite brothers, and them leaving tonight. They're leaving tonight. So now, and who is in charge over again national security? A heathen. So now again, it's showing you the whole mindset that they were always out to destroy the black, Hispanic, and Native Indian.
That's right.
And this is why again we continue to read out, you know, out of our records, and as a reminder to the nation, and a reminder to our people. And as the generals and them continue to make mention, we need to be separated.
That's right.
Not by words, not we need just naturally need to black, Hispanics, and Native Indians just need to come together and move away from these other nations. Because why, in a time like this, as you know, as we read, as we, you know, honor this sister, you know, in as we say, and we will read it in chapter 9 in the book of Esther. But what we honoring right now is the time, you know, that the Most High, you know, separated us or save us from a nation that desired to extinct us.
That's right.
That we be no more, as in Psalm 83 says, they say that the Jews be no more in remembrance. That we get rid of them, that they be no more in remembrance. And this was a time where this sister, you know, brought up in a righteous home, under righteous leadership, you know, could I make that stand and, you know, turn unto the Most High and seek, you know, the grace of the Most High, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Continue if you want to. What?
Yeah, so like I said, you know, even you know, looking at the whole aspect of what took place, you know, the same thing that, you know, these heathens was set up and employed to destroy us, you know, that was used against them. Because even if when you look back in the chapters, you know, in the Bible, chapter 8, and we can start from verse 13, right? Chapter 8 and verse 13. So like if you have some icon, if you can. Chapter 8 and verse 13. Oh, you couldn't? Okay. Slovakia. Yeah. So I will read that one. The book of Esther, chapter 8 and verse 13. And the copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, and that the Jews should be ready against the day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So you're not really showing, you know, everything that they plan. The Most I put it in the favor of the nation of Israel, that what? We would have that vengeance against all those who were our enemies. Because those who were enemies were waiting to destroy us in all those 127 provinces. But now, we have the power now to destroy them. You understand? And even when you jump into to verse 9, you just fast track it. Book of Esther chapter 9 and verse 11, it says, on that day, the number of those that were slain in Shushan the palace was brought before the king. And the king said unto Esther the queen, the Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan, the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman, what have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now, what is the petition, and it shall be granted thee? Or what is the request further that it shall be done? So we see here that the nation of Israel was able to what? Have revenge on the enemies that come up against the nation of Israel. Not just Haman, but all those who plotted against the nation of Israel to destroy them. Not just in Shushan, but in all the other provinces that the nation of Israel was.
That's like, yeah, I know how to make mention, and that is why we always make mention concerning all these nations, and the Psalm 83 again is always a marker concerning they always had a hand and in this to plot against the children of Israel in their destruction. And as a reminder, that is why we always continue to speak against them. So not just in this passage, but throughout the records concerning they know always having the opposition against truth, and that's why again the fight will always be against Esau and Jacob. Again, these other nations is just like corn, as the scripture say that they're like nothing, less than nothing, like unto spittle, like a drop in a bucket. I just paraphrase it. This is who they is.
Right.
This is who they is.
Yeah. It's a lot here, so I just want to even touch on, the small part, because after we were able to destroy our enemies, we see here now where this celebration or this honor, came into play. And we could continue in the book of Esther, chapter 9 and verse 17, which says, "And on the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th day of the same rested day, and made it a day of feasting and gladness." So that was after destruction of our enemies. On these 2 days, we say, "Yo, let me take a drink. Let me eat some and celebrate the destruction of our enemies." So and when you look at verse 20, Mordecai was promoted to basically second in command to the king. And with that now, him being honored among the nation of Israel. Verse 20 says, "And Mordecai wrote these things and sent letters unto all the Jews that were in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, both near and far, to establish this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month of Adar and the 15th day of the same yearly, as the days wherein the Jews rested for their enemies, and the month that was turned in unto them from sorrow to joy, and from mourning into a good day, and that they should make them days of feasting and joy, and of sending portions one to another, and gifts to the poor." Right? And the Jews undertook to do this as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them. So this is where this whole celebration of the Feast of Purim generally was fully established, and that it was put in place at that time. And if you read a little more in verse 24, it says, "Because Haman the son, the Hamadatha, the Agite, the enemy of all the Jews, had devised against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast pearl," which is the lot, "to consume them and to destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that this wicked device, which he devised against the Jews, should return upon his own head, and that he and his sons should be made hanged on the gallows. Wherefore they called these days Purim, after the name Pur. Therefore all the words of this letter and of that which they had seen concerning this matter which had come unto them. Right? So that here.
Yes. As the Geek mentioned, and this is it sum it up all here now. It sum it up all here now. Again, as a remembrance in a time where, all the nations again, because of conspiracy, coming together again to extinct all the Jews throughout the four corners of the earth, who are the Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians. A reminder, and on these feast days, as we continue to do in remembrance as our forefathers and as they lay down these records, is a reminder to the Black, Hispanics, and Native Indians. We need to separate.
That's right.
We need to separate, because again, being of that bloodline, again, as we know, that is recorded in the book of Numbers, chapter 1 and verse 18, and you being the seed of your father, you knowing that this is who you belong to, because this is not anybody can join this.
That's
because
right.
Again, the Chinese have a bloodline, as we say, Haman have a bloodline, Asuros have a bloodline, all they have a bloodline. And the children of Israel have a bloodline. Mother Benjamin,
That's right.
Hadass, which we know in Hebrew, which is Esther, have a bloodline, and they belong to the chosen people, and they were one out of the 12 tribes. And the scriptures have the records of these brothers, 12 brothers, again, which was from the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and which name became Israel after seeking out to know, understanding the Most High. And this is why, again, as we continue on all these feast days and all these high holy days, that we are ordained by the Most High to really gather ourselves together, because this is the only way that we could really come back as a nation, as a people, to our identity.
Right.
Outside of this, as we say, we see it firsthand. We see it firsthand, and any brother or sister, that outside of the I.S.U.P.K, and return back to their heritage, as you say, their laws, their customs, and their as you say, statutes and commandments, they would see that outside of here is death and destruction. And this is why we always host these high holy days, these feast days. And as we continue, to bring out, these records, this won't just be a day for tomorrow, but this would be, as we say, just as the I.S.U.P.K does during the time of the corona, during the time of any so-called pandemic, which we know the Most High God is demonstrating his power and bringing destruction and bringing plagues upon these nations and them, to separate us, Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians, from these nations and them.
That's right.
And again, to rebuild back the spirit of the Black, Hispanic, and Native Indian family, that they would be, set back in the position of authority over all these nations and rule in righteousness. Because as the scriptures say, when the righteous in authority, that the whole earth rejoices. You see, even the trees know, after 7 years, after 6 years,
That's right.
the 7 years, I will get a breed.
That's right.
I'll get a breeder. Let the fruit drop. Let it drop. Let everybody feed. Let everybody feed. And that is righteousness. That right in the sight of the Most High. Because again, when you go to Genesis and as we read through, he say every day, here we say, and the Most High saw that it was good. So everything that he said before, he saw it was good.
Right.
So as we continue to bring out these reminders and to awaken the spirit, because again, the spirit entrapped in a society of destruction. And coming out that destruction is the old, that we always make mention of that. The only way is through here, through your records, and by righteous men breaking down these records. So again, as we come up and as we sum up, to the beginning, of as we say, of him that how we go, Esau is the end and Jacob is the beginning. That this is the beginning.
Right.
That's right.
I know, as we say, we could sit down and as we say, we could as we say, really be brothers.
That's right.
That's right.
And again, as the generals and them continue to mention and continue to raise up, men and build the spirit in righteousness and see that, hey, really actually, Simeon, Levi, as we say, Judah, Benjamin, Ephraim and Manasseh could really sit down and they could drink wine.
That's
because
right.
when you watch, as you say, when you look through all the classes and all the mainstream that's taking place throughout the nation, even when you watch at the cross the line, you see them brothers rolling dice.
Count.
You see them brothers and them, we just being brothers.
That's right.
We not against one another.
That's right.
But tie into a society that making you separate from your brother could make you be an enemy towards
That's right.
God.
That's right.
To the Most High, because the Most High never ought us to be enemies against one another.
That's
He
right.
ought us to be brothers, because Jacob didn't have 12 different sons. He had 12 sons.
That's right.
They were the seed of he, just as they make mention in the book of Numbers. And that's why again, as we honor tonight and we give honor unto the Most High God our power, and Christ our King, and again
right.
as the order come down, as the structure laid down in 1 Corinthians 11:3, that structure, and as generals and them continue to raise up righteous brothers and sisters. We could sit at this day and turn to our records, because general make mention, we have the book now.
That's right.
Before this now is like when Esther writes, then we had to wait till Job write, till Psalms write.
We have everything.
We are the whole book.
That's right.
So now, and on these days and them, just as we say on the 14 day, at the 15, 14 and 15, we can do this in remembrance of that our forefathers was as we say, given that grace, as the Most High turn the spirit or move away that evil spirit and turn that spirit that are hidden to do what? To give honor unto Him.
So like I said, even as they're saying that, what comes up to mind, is the Romans 15:4, which really, sums it up. Say, Romans 15:4 says, whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope.
That's right.
You understand? And this is really all what this story of Esther and the Feast of Purim is. It's something that was written aforetime for our learning, so that we now would be able to understand and see, how to act righteously. You understand how brotherhood and sisterhood, is needed to save the nation of Israel. And that is what we do, and that is what we create in the I.S.U.P.K under Commanding General Islam. All right. And with that brings us to the end of the class. Anything else? We pass the class on to Priest and Officer Barrier. Yeah. Yeah, right.
Security announcements. We are the I.S.U.P.K. out of 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Commanding General Yahanna. New rules for brothers and sisters. When a new brother or sister comes into the school, they are off limits for 6 months. They are to be saluted only. They are here to shed themselves of the world. After 6 months, if a brother or a sister has an interest in a particular person, he or she must get permission from the head to speak to a brother or sister. There is another 6 months in which the brother or sister will court each other. After the 6 months period, the brother or sister will get permission from the head to marry. Tithes, which is a commandment, you can find this in Numbers 18 to 21 and Malachi 3, 8 to 10. It means tenth in Hebrew and is pronounced Ma'ashara. 10% of any increase the Lord gives you, you give to the treasury department or teacher. Priest fund, free will offering for priests, not mandatory. Whatsoever you would like to give. Upcoming holy convocation, the Lord's Passover, the 16th day of the first month, Saturday, April the 24th, 2020. As you know, this year we out at the ranch. Exodus, you could get us in Exodus 12, 1 to 51, and Leviticus 23, 4, 5, and 1, First Chronicles 5, 7 to 8, and Second Chronicles 30 and 17. Reminding Akium and Akwapium to check on social media such as ISUPK.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and so on for ISUPK events and materials. If a brother wants to be a trooper in the school, then he is to start wearing all black, which includes black boots, like shirts, like pants, like headband, or scarf. And with that, we say, I imagine. Turn on face, please. Let's see the Lord's Prayer in Hebrew. Abanawa, Shabashemaya, Kwadash, Aya, Shamka, Yahawa, Malakwaka, Taba'a, Ratazaka, Aya, Aisha, Barataza, Kawa, Aya, Bashamaya, Natan Lanawa, Lakam, Hal, Wawam, Wasalak Nanawa, Kawawak Nanawa, Kasalak Nanawa, Kawawak Nanawa, Wala'a, Tabaya Nawa, Banasayawan, Abal, Hawashanawa, Maya, Rai, Kaya, Laka, Amalakwa, Wahala, Wahataparat, Lion, Aman,
We just say in English now. It's our Father.
Our Father.
Which art in heaven.
Which art in heaven.
Hallowed be thy name.
Hallowed be thy name.
Yahweh.
Yahweh.
Thy kingdom come.
Thy kingdom come.
Thy will be done.
Thy will be done.
In earth.
In earth.
As it is in heaven.
As it is in heaven.
Give us this day.
Give us this day.
Our daily bread.
Our daily bread.
And forgive us.
And forgive us.
Our debts.
Our debts.
As we forgive.
As we forgive.
Our debtors.
Our debtors.
And lead us not.
Lead us not
into temptation.
into temptation.
But deliver us.
Deliver us
from evil.
from evil.
For thine is the kingdom.
Thine is the kingdom.
And the power.
And the power.
And the glory.
And the glory.
Forever.
Forever.
So be it.
So be it.
Sir, let's give the teacher one courtesy salute. I Majim Shabbat. I Majim Barak.
Yahweh Shem Yahshai Rakah.
Yahweh Shem Shabbat.
Yajimata. Let's give the sisters online one courtesy salute. I Majim Shabbat. I Majim Barak.
Yahweh Shem Yahshai.
Yajimata. Class dismissed.